Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of The Demon Priest by Jim Burrows. Our protagonists have been talking about getting the demon priest's paperwork in order. Nobody escapes paperwork, not even demon priests. And they heard a thump. "What was that?" I asked. It sounded like a couple 100 pounds landing from a few 100 feet up. "Probably a meta, a clumsy flyer, or a leaper," replied Agent Novak. "Shall we see?" asked the father. Maddie sighed. "I suppose we must," she said. So we all trooped out to find Lionheart, the world's richest superhero, standing on the steps of St. Michael's. The true knight had looked all puffed up, just like TC had acted out. Lionheart pulled the proud thing off way better. He was like suave or nonchalant or something in that tailored leather uniform jacket, the black pants with gold piping, and the Myrmidon helmet with the same gold lion head logo as on his chest. "Ah, good to see that Falcon's on the job, agents," he said. "I assume that you're here to check this gentleman's bona fides a bit further?" "Let's just leave it as official business, Lionheart," said Agent Jardin. "Can we help you?" "Just checking out the potential for difficulties in the shadow of the Lyonnais. My tenants, clients, and guests pay for top-of-the-line protection and security, and the cost of that is eternal vigilance, as they say." "Something like that," said Jardin. "So I take it we're neighbors of a sort?" "I'm not familiar with you, sir," said the father. That seemed to surprise Lionheart. I didn't need any voices to tell me that he was just a little peeved that someone wouldn't know him. "You might say that," said the world's wealthiest wonder. "I own and live in the Lyonnais." He pointed at the skyscraper several blocks away. "I provide premium protection to its residents and my other clientele, and so knowing the potential threats and trouble spots in the area is vital." That sounds quite laudable, and not unlike my own views regarding my guests and neighbors, though I will confess that I don't sell my services for a fee. Lionheart was about to say something when the father held up his hand. Something seemed to have caught his eye. He made a small, just a moment gesture and walked over to a big indent in the lawn. I followed. He kneeled down, and I could see a pair of deeper marks. He and laid his hands softly right between the two footprints. After a few moments, he lifted his hand, and the ground rose up as he did. Once it was about level with the rest of the lawn, he made a small hand gesture and stood back up, and we returned to the group on the steps. "I'm sorry, you were about to say something about the neighborhood?" "Not really." And with that, Lionheart turned, took a couple of steps, and leapt into the air toward the Lyonnais, driving the paving stones of the walk down into the ground. The father shook his head and followed Lionheart down the path, kneeling down to raise each of the stones like he did the lawn. When that was done, he came back to the steps. "An interesting neighbor. Thank you for the warning and your tolerance, agents," he said to the two from Falcon. "I will see to your paperwork. One doesn't wish to make one's neighbors worry overmuch." "Thank you, Father," said Maddie, trying to stay all professional and official. "We're just trying to keep the peace." The father turned and nodded toward the true knight. Turning back, he said to Maddie, "I appreciate it. Feel free to come by any time. Shall I walk you to your car?" "That's okay," she answered. "We can find the way." We all walked back into the church, and as the agents turned toward the north exit, Mrs. Morrow, TC's aunt, stood up from one of the pews in the choir section and came toward us. "Is there something that I can help you with, Mrs. Morrow?" "No, Father, I just came to apologize. I've been thinking about what you said last night, and I realized that I may owe you one. You've said a few times you're retired, and so is St. Michael's. This isn't a church anymore. It's part of your home. We've been acting as if it was a church, and you a pastor, asking things of you, coming in to sing and give thanks. But you never invited us. Well, other than last night, that is, and that was just to try to undo some of the troubles we've brought to your door. It's all right, Mrs. Morrow. May I call you June? When she nodded, he continued, June. St. Michael's belonged to the church for hundreds of years. You can be forgiven for thinking that it is still the heart of a parish. Even I still call it St. Michael's. The doors have no locks, and I haven't added them. Generations of people have been used to coming here, not only for worship, but for comfort, aid, to express their joy and thanksgiving. Thank you for excusing our rudeness. Still, you didn't invite us, we imposed. It was no great hardship, June, a small imposition. Believe me, I've seen hardship and suffering. I was on earth for the Great War a century ago, and for the famines, epidemics, and deaths that followed. I have been on mission and ministered to the fallen in the realms where they are bound. And to be honest, I have not decided what I intend to do with the church. I'm living in the parish house. It is more than sufficient to my needs. I bought the church because I thought it might be of help in my mission, without knowing how or even clearly what my mission or calling here is. Is it something you can tell us about, your mission? Not at present. Not beyond aiding those who need my help. Since I moved in, my St. Michael's, seems to have helped in one way. It has provided a place for you and the others to sing. And I must confess I enjoyed hearing your voices raised. So let me formally invite you and your choir to come here to sing, coordinated with Henri and Lee, in case I discover other ways to use the church. But beyond that, you are free to gather here for that purpose. Well, thank you, Father. I feel better about it, having your invitation. I'm glad to hear it. Now, if that is all, Lee and I have some errands to run. Of course, Father. Thank you. We spent the next several hours at the household putting together the proper Falcon registration forms and documents. I guess these things usually take a lot of time and paper for any human or meta just to let them register a proper secret identity. It gets a whole lot more complicated when you've been around longer than calendars, like the father. The bookkeeper's a lawyer, though, and she knew her stuff and walked us through it all. She said it wasn't all that different from Paragon, the man of the future, who technically hasn't been born yet, even though he's been a superhero since before there even was a way for them to register their identities. I ended up registered as a sidekick. Well, they used some other fancy lawyer words, but it means that I can help him and know some of his secrets, but not have to tell them without a special kind of warrant. I'm not supposed to say it this way, but by the end of the afternoon, we had all the papers submitted to be registered superheroes. On our way home, we picked up dinner at Mr. Takey Outy, and just as we were sitting down to eat, there was a knock at the door. It was Selina. Sorry to interrupt your dinner. You don't watch the evening news, do you? She asked as soon as she came in. No, I'm afraid I have neither a radio nor a television set. Yeah, I thought so. Maybe I should let you eat in peace first? Is the news urgent? Probably not that urgent, but I'm pretty sure that it's important. Very well, let's eat first. Would you care to join us? I ate already, but I might nibble on a spare rib or two, if you can spare them. I think we can manage. We chatted and talked about registering secret identities and stuff. Once we were finished and were opening our fortune cookies, the father asked her about the news. There are more people gone missing, she said. There were witnesses to a couple of them getting snatched, and this is the bad part for you. The report is that the kidnappers were wearing T-shirts with the face of a devil on them. There are people tying them to you and hinting that there's a connection between your gang and us. She pointed her thumb at the skull on her T-shirt. That's dumb, I said. He saved the ones that Dr. Apollo took. It's all backwards. Selina shrugged. People aren't always sensible. They fear what scares them. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. I suspect you are right, Selina. There are probably two targets of these actions. I'm the less important one. It may inconvenience me. I imagine that's the intent of the images on their shirts. But the actual victims have much more to fear. That's true, said Selina, but I thought you should know about both parts. Did the reports contain enough information to suggest where we should start looking for the victims or the kidnappers? There wasn't much. I've asked the outcasts to see what they can learn. I thought you might want to go to the rescue? Yes, I think young Theo would want that, but we must have a care. The outcasts, with your skull symbol, in a way you too may be a target, if indirectly. Many would see both skull and devil head as symbols of supernatural evil, and a gang wearing one may tarnish the reputation of the other, if they are both seen to be allies of the same demon. I'd thought of that, said Selina, and I warned them to be careful. Good. Several of us have a group call going on our phones. So far no one has a lead. Wait, the kid seems to have something. The kid? Our youngest member, one of our best scouts, very sharp senses and stealthy too, says there's something going on in a waterside warehouse that looks like it might be, devil head spotted. She tapped her earpiece and said, Selina, who's near the kid? Luca and Thomas, keep back up. Not too close. She tapped it again and turned to the father. Want to go there? Just watch for a while, or, Would you be willing to work with Falcon? We'd rather not, but that might make sense. If you're willing, there's an agent I trust. Okay. The father took out his phone and called Maddie. She agreed to meet us a block away from the kids' position where Tomas and Luca were. Just as we were getting into TC's car, Selina's call went dead. She drove really fast down to Waterside and a cop car chased us the last block. Selina pulled up next to a car with Falcon markings. Maddie, Agent Jardin, was there with Novak, her partner. They both had guns drawn and were crouched behind their car watching some sort of melee going on further down the street. We started to get out of the car, or the father, TC, and Selina did. It didn't look like anything I wanted anything to do with. Stay in your vehicle, ordered the cop from behind us. It's okay, called Maddie and waved them forward. Crouching down, the three of them joined her. I didn't like the way the cop was eyeing me or the way his hand was hovering around his holster, so I joined the three of them. What happened? The father asked Maddie. I was hoping you guys knew something, she said. There was some sort of three-way brawl going on when we got here. Skulls, Devils, and Lionheart duking it out. It's mostly around that corner now. One of your guys, an outcast, is down in the street, and at least one of the guys with the devil shirts is... Vroom! Crash! Went something with a big flash of light around the corner. TC started to stand up full, but Maddie laid a hand on his arm. I'm sorry, Agent, that sound wasn't from an outcast. I gotta go help. Please, sir, just another 30 seconds. Suddenly, I noticed the real quiet sound of a helicopter. I'd never heard one of those quiet Falcon copters before. It was way closer than I thought. Clang! Crash! Two big Falcon mechs, the guys in the huge armor, dropped down into the intersection. Cease hostilities, one of them boomed. Maddie stood up and headed toward the intersection. Selina and Agent Novak followed. Novak grabbed Selina's arm to stop her, and she just ignored him, and he stumbled as she pulled free from his grip. The cop called out, "Halt!" and drew his gun, but the magazine fell out, and when he tried to cock it, the slidey thing came off in his hand. That's when I noticed TC gesturing at him. Luca, stand down, called Selina. A woman in an Outcast t-shirt backed around the corner from the side street. There was a blue crackly glow between her and whatever she was backing away from. Okay, Thomas is down. Help him, she called. The Outcast woman looked over her shoulder and saw the Outcast guy lying in the street. She scuttled back and over to him, holding that blue glowy shield thing between him and the side street. Medic, she called. On their way, called Maddie. Who's in charge here? Demanded a large voice, and then Lionheart strode around the corner past one of the mechs. The other had disappeared down the side street around the corner. The mech called, Halt, and stretched out an arm to block Lionheart. He pushed the arm away, but the mech was fast and grabbed his wrist. Lionheart paused and pulled against its grip. There was a nasty metal sound, and it looked like Lionheart was going to pull free when I noticed TC making gestures with his hands. Lionheart looked startled, and the mech pulled him closer. I said halt, it said. Just about then, the other mech and a couple of Falcon's special ops guys came into sight, escorting 3 guys in devil t-shirts. "Damn it, do you know who I am?" demanded Lionheart. "Let him go," said Maddie, "but damn it, Lionheart, stand the hell down." The mech let him go and took an on-guard stance, the one they call at ease, but it never looked all that at ease to me. Selina walked over and knelt down next to Luca and Thomas. Lionheart eyed the outcasts and then looked the father in the eyes. "I might have expected you here with all these," he said, well, almost snarled, and gestured to the outcasts and the devil shirts. The cop had reassembled his gun and holstered it. He looked pretty mad at just about everybody. "What the hell's going on here?" he demanded of, well, the world in general. "These 2 gangs," said Lionheart, "seem to have had a falling out. I stepped in to bring order." "Actually," said Luca, "we were surveilling that warehouse. We'd heard that the kidnap victims were there when these guys jumped us, and then he came along and attacked indiscriminately." "Kidnap victims?" asked Maddie. "Down there?" "Nah," said a kid in an outcast shirt. No idea where he came from. "I think they got away in a couple of trucks." That's when the ambulances started showing up, and Lionheart, the devil shirts, and the outcasts all started accusing each other of stuff. It got really crazy for a bit. Maddie shut everybody up, sent the uninjured devil shirts and Luca to Falcon headquarters, and got Lionheart to promise to go there on his own sometime that day. By the time everyone had settled down, though, the outcast kid was nowhere to be seen again. Selina went in the ambulance with Tomas. TC drove us back to St. Michael's. When we got out of the car in the parking lot behind the church, the kid was there. I kind of think he got out of the car, but I didn't notice him till we got there. The father stared at the kid for a bit, then asked, "Do you know where those trucks may have gone, or is there a way that you can help find them?" "Yeah, well, no, I don't know where they went, and I can't find them, but the mechanic can," he answered, nodding his head at TC. "I stuck one of your trackers on it. This one," he said, pulling a tiny bundle out of his pocket and handing it to TC. TC took the small cloth bundle and smiled. He unwrapped it and prodded the contents with one finger. "I recognize it," he said. "I should be able to find it. Good move, kid." He turned to the father and continued, "So, Father Gregory, do we handle this on our own, or do you want to call in the cops and your friends at Falcon?" "If we can do it with a bit more finesse, perhaps it would be best to surveil the situation before calling in Falcon and the others." "Works for me, Father." Retrospective 5. William, 1955 to 1988. Sam kept an eye on the boy for the next few years. At first, he merely dropped in each time his journeys on the paths took him near William's Earth. After a while, though, the young man managed to master the art of lucid dreaming and found his way to his grandfather's pub. Betty the barmaid got word to Sam, and soon they were able to rendezvous there. The demon priest walked into the pub and found his old friend's grandson playing darts with one of the locals, a puka by the name of Ned. At the time, Ned had a yearling's tail and antlers, the visage of an old man, and a goat's beard. "Ah, you've brought your own bit of touch to the place, William." "How so, Uncle Samuel?" the young man said. "Well, in Alan's day, the clientele were always more mundane." "Really? I'd have thought that a pub and dream would be more surreal." "And so it is. Now," replied the priest, turning to the puka. He continued, "How have you been, Ned? We don't usually see you around these parts." Ned scrunched up his face in an amused grin or grimace and replied, "Bein' well enow." He looked around the room and twitched his nose. "Somehow the place called to me. Just seemed like I belonged here and now." Sam nodded. "Alan certainly left his mark on the place, and I suppose it's not surprising if William does the same." Sam turned at the sound of buzzing and was only mildly surprised to find himself facing a pixie hovering at the level of his face. She was about 9 or 10 inches tall, naked, and an iridescent golden color from head to toe and to the tips of her dragonfly-like wings. Hello, Sam, she exclaimed in a contralto voice that seemed entirely out of place given her size. Who's your pretty young friend? Before Sam could answer, she squirmed and shivered and grew in size until her feet reached the ground and her wings vanished away. He's Bishop Whitcomb's, Alan's, grandson. Ooh, she cooed. Then, with a shrug and a shudder, she squirmed into a diaphanous dress that just wove itself around her. I didn't know. With a wiggle and a giggle, she turned to William, smiled, and added, I'm so sorry. I do hope I wasn't too naughty for you. No, not at all, William managed to reply. With a huge, deep sigh, she fluttered her eyelashes, then all over. Oh, good. I wouldn't want to frighten you away. You're too pretty. Thank you, miss. For you, Fern. My usual calling is difficult for humans, full of flutters and trills. I suppose I could teach you when you have time to practice. Your calling? Asked William. Oh, you are new, aren't you, pretty, pretty? She fluttered. Fays, fairies, the folk, and, well, just about everyone who lives in realms more magical than yours, which is simply most of them, well, we protect our names, hoard them, keep them, don't let them fly around loose. But, well, it is so hard to talk and gossip and chatter without something to call one, so we have callings, not names, like pretty, pretty. So I should call you Fern, but it's not your name? I see. But you call Sam Sam. If that's not his baptismal name, it's close. Oh, yes, but Sam, Reverend Father Samuel, is his name, his calling. His calling, she giggled. And his mission. Can't hide it. It's just him. After a moment, she whispered conspiratorially, he has another celestial name, but few would even whisper a fallen angel's name. And so I shouldn't share my name with you? Ooh, Fern shimmied all over. Share a name, the same, both, how intimate. And on a first meeting, you are a brazen one, aren't you, pretty, pretty? No, I was confirming that I should not confide my name to you, not that we should share it together. Sam stepped in. Yes, more or less, that would be best. You aren't here bodily, in full. Your name will have less power than if you had walked here. Still, it is wise to go by a nom de rev, a use name, what she called a calling. It should be something you are comfortable with, but nothing to you, chosen on a whim. Oh, I like that, said the youngster. Turning to the pixie woman, he made a sweeping bow and said, a pleasure to meet you, Fern. You may call me Whim. And Whim he was for the next few years. And we'll find more about Whim's adventures in dreaming and in life next time.